Yo, so I just want to talk about a bit about one of the things that I've been building, which is human intelligence, learning how to read people, read rooms, and not only humans, but the situation itself, situational awareness. But I want to focus on just some of my learnings on reading people. Like, that's what this video is going to be about. I'm not going to give you tips, but I'm just going to share my learnings, and I hope you can kind of take away something useful. So, first of all, for the past few months, I've been reading this book called The Behavior Ops Manual by Chase Hughes. It has literally everything you can possibly think of when it comes to body language, persuasion, human intelligence, everything. And it even has an entire chapter about the human brain and how to improve yourself as a human being. There was a lot of things that stuck with me, but there are three main things that I use in my daily life. And I just want to start with the most important thing, which is seeing people through a different lens. So, over the past few weeks, actually, during my interactions with people whom I frequently meet up with, like friends, for instance, like the day ones, when they say certain things that I completely disagree with because what they're saying isn't really right. To them, it may seem like it's right, but to me, it seems just like an excuse for a lot of things. And an older version of me would have argued with them, trying to convince that I'm right and they're wrong. But the entire point of that conversation, and conversations in general, is not to prove who's right and who's wrong, but it's to study the person and find out where their words are coming from. So, for example, one of my really good friends, I'm not going to mention his name, but he comes from a really abusive household, a lot of isolation, and he's kind of left out in the corner. And he's always made to do all the things. And if you do that, if you live through that life for a very long time, it changes you. And so he lacked a lot of things in his life growing up, especially love. And one thing that I've been observing in him is that he's always following people and putting them on a pedestal because he sees these people as figures to look up to. He has a lot of adult friends because he doesn't really have a good mother or father figure. And he tends to look up to these people even though they don't have the best interest in him. And also, some of the things that he says, like how the world is against him and all those sort of things, is because he's coming from a place of pain and suffering. It's somehow I feel that suffering sometimes because I stop thinking inwardly and just start thinking outwardly. I feel what he's feeling, even though I don't really feel it, but I look through the lens of him, where he's coming from, what has he been through. And just by looking at things differently, just by seeing people as this, seeing people for being reasons of their current choices and actions, it's the most peaceful thing you can do to yourself and the other person. Because it removes the load to constantly prove yourself, and it also gives you so much of empathy. Because the entire interaction doesn't become about you anymore, it becomes about them. And from there, that's when you start to realize why they act how they act. And that's one of the things that I've been constantly learning so far. It's literally just seeing people as reasons and not facts or anything like that. People are the result of their childhood and what they did in their childhood to seek reward, safety, and to make friends. That's all. Pretty interesting stuff, which I learned from the book, by the way. And it's something that I'm constantly keeping in my mind. And when I meet new people and I observe certain behaviors, I literally go back to the past. I don't even stay in the present anymore. I'm slowly taking myself to a version of them and tying it to these three things in the past. So, what they did to make friends, what they did to feel safe, and what they did to find rewards. So, these little things build the person eventually to who I'm seeing. And even it may be subtle, like the things that they've done to achieve these three things. But those things combined create the character that I'm speaking with. And then, instead of getting angry at their shitty behaviors, for instance, I tie it to the reasons of my analysis. And I may be wrong, I may be right. But that's the point of the entire conversation. It's to probe and it's to understand. So, that aside, that's one of the things that I've learned. And now, when it comes to body language and all that, I'm not gonna tell you that I mastered the entire fucking thing, but I've been reading a lot on the elements of behavior. So there's literally a table, just like the periodic table, but this time instead of elements, you have every body language that you can think of. And each element, like each behavioral element, contains confirming gestures, like behaviors, sub behaviors that confirm that this gesture is happening, the type of behavior that it is, as in, is this aggressive, is this an open behavior, is this closed behavior, things like that. Then you got amplifying gestures that prove that this behavior is actually the behavior that you're looking for. And then you have conflicting behaviors that are sub behaviors that don't prove that this one thing is happening. So even with just studying all these things, it changes how you view interactions, and it slowly builds this instinct. Now when I'm interacting with people, because the first step of every interaction isn't about saying the right things or proving someone right. It's about focusing on your state first. You find that comfort under that pressure, because personally for me, when it comes to interactions, it's not social anxiety, but it's that constant need to prove something. And that happens mainly out of a place of not so much of control. It comes from a place of a lack of control. Yeah. And that's when my heart starts to race. I start speeding up. I start chasing an outcome from the interaction. So I rush to the next question. I want a specific answer. So I shove that all aside and I focus on my state first, my internal state. So if I make that the outcome, I naturally find comfort under that pressure, that fear, that racing heart, that impulse to rush the conversation. That's step one. And that's the hardest part. And from there, once I achieve that state, I naturally go into looking at what's going on in the face. I don't care about what's going on in the body, whatever that happens, I don't care. I just care about what's going on in their face. And I mainly look for what's happening in the eyes, because that's the main thing that I'm focusing on right now. I'm studying all these behaviors from the behavioral element table, but that is just to get a broad understanding of what's going on. And some of the behaviors are on the face. And I'm slowly building this instinct, because when I have conversations now, after going through that phase of finding comfort first and move on to the face, I mainly look out for the eyes. When people talk about things, two things happen. First, changes in behavior. And that comes to the second thing, context. So when you combine these two very important things, you see simple little behaviors that most people miss. And two of the most important behaviors that I've been seeing is blink rate. So it's the rate at which people blink. And you'll sometimes realize that when you look at people's eyes only and link it to what they're seeing, it tells you a lot, especially when people increase their blink rate when you start at a baseline first. So you always set the baseline of the behavior, the blink rate, for instance. And that's at the start of the conversation. That's what I always do. So I get into a state of comfort and I set a baseline. I tell myself, like, this guy's blink rate is normal. And as the conversation progresses, I slowly start to see it increase. But it only happens when they're speaking about certain topics. Context matters. And when you see that change from the baseline, that is a shift in behavior. But the hard part now is, why did that change occur? What's happening in the person's mind that made that behavior change? And that's the thing that I'm working on right now. It's that. Observing is one thing, but finding out why is the hard part. Because there's no point in observing a behavior when you can't tell why. And sometimes it's really straightforward based on what they're saying. And another important behavior that I've been looking for is gestures with the eyes as well. So usually when you think, people tend to look to the left, look to the right. But doing those things aren't wrong at all. But it's for the specific person. One thing that I've been clearly observing is when people recall memories, numbers, names, locations, where are they looking at? Which direction their body is facing when they tend to recall all these memories. And the more I meet this person, these behaviors tend to come out more. So it becomes more predictable. So let's say that you are one of my friends and you're talking about how you went to New York and you look to your left. And whenever you talk about locations, you always gesture to the left. And the moment I switch the topic to numbers, you gesture to the right. I mean, this is my left, but that's your right, right? But yeah, you get the point. So it's these simple things that I'm looking out for. And once you set that baseline for future interactions, it becomes so much more easier to identify whether someone's lying, bullshitting, or even telling the truth. Like it's such a simple thing to observe. It doesn't have to be like you need to scan them in under 6 seconds. But reading people comes down to meeting a lot of people frequently. And that's how you study something. You don't study something within a span of 6 seconds. You're not an interrogator, but you're just a human being who is walking this earth. And having this simple skill changes everything. It changes how you see people and interact with them. I think that's the most important thing for me. It's just seeing human beings differently. And just going back to the body language stuff, it's an instinct now. It's slowly becoming an instinct. The moment I'm seeing all these things, it's when I'm in a state of control. If I'm missing out all these things, it's because of a state issue. I'm not focusing on my state. So I go back to focusing on my state. And then I observe the body language, mainly the face. That's all. I don't do anything else because I'm still learning. You don't want to make this shit an ego thing because once it gets to ego, you don't learn. You feel like you're the master at it. And that's when the worst type of shit happens from there. But yeah, this is what I've been learning so far and applying in my life. It's so weird. Everyone, talks about AI and it's a booming industry, how artificial intelligence is going to control the world. But no one wants to talk about how humans are operating these AIs and no one wants to study humans. Like very few of them do. And honestly, I don't know whether this is going to work out. But in the end, I know once I finish this book and reread it again and do more applications, speak to more people, observe more, find that comfort under pressure. Eventually, I know I'll become James Bond. Not in that Aston Martin black tie suit all the way, but it's more of his mindset, how he sees things. Even become Jack Reacher, for instance. I want that thinking, that situational and human awareness. That's what I'm really looking for when it comes to weaponizing my mind. And that's what interests me. That's what I find super interesting. And that's what draws me in. So yeah, I hope this random video helped you in any way. Because honestly, this isn't some tips or tricks video. It's just how I see things now. It's how I study and read people. By reading a book, by applying the knowledge, coming back to the book, analyzing my learnings, and I keep doing it over and over again. So I hope this helped in any way. Ciao.